Hey y'all, Daniel from Ironman here, and today we're going to be talking about BPC-157. This is actually the first peptide that actually got me into this whole thing, so this is by far going to be the most relevant to my experience and where I can speak more anecdotally from the actual compound and my experience of using it to heal a catastrophic injury, which was basically the inception of my company, my regenerative medicine journey. Basically, everything that you see that I'm formulating within my business plan and the education I'm providing, it's because of this peptide. So it has a special place in my heart. Before we actually get into the literature and the educational side, I want everyone to know I am not a freaking doctor. And if you came from my Instagram at I am not a doctor too, that content is all rage bait. Basically, the way I do my reels is I say some outlandish statement transparently, and I basically relate it to some sort of little value, and then I pique people's interest. So if you see that on Instagram, that is what I do. Here is where the magic actually happens. We talk about the literature, we talk about the practical use, we talk about the theoretical use, and we talk about the unknown. So that is what I do on this channel. And we also have our Ironman. Oh, I keep doing this every time. We have our website, ironmendllc.com, where we source pharmaceutical grade peptides straight to your door. We do an intake form. We set you up with a doctor asynchronously, and they're delivered refrigerated, reconstituted with all of the tools to get you started on your peptide journey. Do not, do not lie on your intake forms. This is serious medical stuff. We operate in a legal capacity, and we're not in the business to take risks, and we truly care about your optimization. All right, that's a mouthful. So BPC-157. Let me just start by saying 544 studies, 30 humans. What does the actual regeneration peptide have to say in the literature? Well, the biggest gap between hype and human evidence is this peptide. It's been studied in over 500 published papers that you can go and look up right now. It's been shown to heal tendons, muscle, bone, nerve, gut lining, even skin burns in rats and in humans as well. The controlled data actually adds up to over 30 people. And across three small pilot studies, there's one registered clinical that tried to test it properly, but got canceled before the results ever formally came out, unfortunately. But we did just get this FDA conversation started. If you watch the live stream, I'm not going to share my opinions on it, but just go and watch it for yourself. It seems as if the FDA have some reading to do, but that's neither here nor there. So it's probably the most talked about, not just recovery peptide, but regular peptide. And it's sitting in a genuine FDA regulatory gray zone right now, which kind of is more less gray than gray, but we'll get into that. So let's go what's actually real, what's theoretical, and what is the actual risk that some people bring up. So it stands for Body Protection Compound 157, and it activates something called VEGFR2. That basically drives nitric oxide production through what's called, this is a mouthful, AKT-eNOS pathway. So the combination of those two promotes something called angiogenesis. All that is just new blood vessel formation, which is the core part of how any single tissue heals without BPC. That's just tissue healing through angiogenesis. And it also ramps up fibroblast activity. And the specific study showing it upregulates growth hormone receptor expression directly inside tendon fibroblasts, which by extension, that explains why the tendon healing data is some of the strongest in the whole literature. Excuse me, got to drink some Red 40. And across all of the animal models, it's actually been tested in tendon and ligament injuries specifically, muscle tears as well as bone fractures, I believe gut ulcers, nerve and spinal cord injuries as well. And as I mentioned earlier, skin wounds, burns, even corneal healing. That's something that's also being studied right now. It's unusually broad reach for one specific molecule, which is why it's so quote unquote miraculous. So here's the part that actually matters and how you personally should walk away from this video with all this information. I rely on literature. I rely on evidence. I don't rely on the peptide bros on Instagram, the Miami biohackers with the research link in their bio. I operate through actual research. I said over 500 published studies. Systematic reviews put the count above that at 544. Not that that's super relevant, but there's literature out there in the hundreds. The overwhelming majority of that, it is animals and cell culture work. So when you actually isolate the human data, kind of underwhelming. It's around 30 people, but I digress. And that's only across three small pilot trials. So across all of the anecdotal evidence we have of BPC and how it works, 30 people we only have to pull from. So in terms of, FDA approval and strong literature in humans, the numbers don't reflect the consistency we see online. But it does get more interesting. There was a real registered phase 1 clinical trial that actually started, if you watch my last video, in 2015 when MOTS-C was discovered. And 42 healthy volunteers specifically designed to test the safety and pharmacokinetics in humans. And in 2016, the researchers canceled the submission of the results. Who knows what they found and why they canceled it? It may have been game-breaking or potentially negative. That's up for speculation. Excuse me, I always burp during these videos, like a baby. But if you want to look that up, excuse me, the trial is NCT02637284. By the way, I'd never kill myself. I am perfectly mentally healthy. If someone comes after me, after watching this video. I had to get that out of there. But as I mentioned, data was never published. Of the human data that does exist, one oral dosing trial, which I personally believe is not as effective as the sub-Q injection, reported mild GI upset, bloating, gas in about, I want to say 8% of the participants. That's basically the most concrete human safety number that exists in the published literature for BPC. And everything else you see cited as human safety data is either extrapolated from animals or pulled from anecdotal self-reports online. So very difficult to find real literature on this. But I want to be really clear about that distinction because there's a lot of content in this space that blurs animal findings and human findings together like they're the same category of evidence. They're not. There's a difference, obviously. So this is where BPC is genuinely different from most peptides that people talk about because it actually has an actual documented regulatory history. So in 2023, the FDA evaluated BPC-157 as part of its bulk drug substance review for compounding pharmacies and placed what's called Category 2. So Category 2, if you don't know, are substances with enough information to be reviewed, but with significant safety concerns that are flagged, not proven, but theoretical and flagged. So the specific concern that the FDA cited, surprisingly, was not vague. It was actually very specific. They pointed to BPC-157 pro-angiogenic activity, the VEGF pathway, say it could potentially, two words that are theoretical, stimulate the growth of occult or existing tumors. So pretty specific there. And in that practice, Category 2 functions as a compounding ban. So licensed pharmacies literally and legally couldn't prepare it for patients anymore. They couldn't compound the drug. And that didn't make demand disappear. It actually pushed the whole gray market. So this ban right here was the reason why the peptide market exploded, in my opinion. It just pushed sourcing towards the unregulated, the research chemical market, which is actually a worse outcome for us as the consumer in terms of safety, in my opinion. I don't want to buy from some guy that messages me on WhatsApp or that slaps a COA that's not verifiable. And COAs don't tell the whole story. They just don't. I'll tell you right now what a COA is. They basically take the compound, they sprinkle a little bit out, not the whole vial. They send it to these drug testing companies and they tell you that specific dust in that one vial. Imagine the whole batch, imagine the whole factory. You're not testing for endotoxins either. So you could potentially be injecting lead, poison, bacteria. You don't know the sterility as well. There's so many factors that you're not accounting for. But I always rant about that on my Instagram. And just source it from an actual compounding pharmacy. It's expensive. It might be a hassle to get the prescription. That's why we created our website. I keep doing that. Ironman LLC. It's the safest and most effective way to do it. But in 2026, the FDA actually removed BPC from category 2, along with 2 other peptides. I'm going to make a video on them as well, TB500, CJC1295, after nominations for those substances were withdrawn. But the nuance that's really easy to get wrong, they removed it from category 2, but did not move it into category 1, which is the list of substances actually permitted for compounding. It has no FDA approval, no recognized pharmacopoeia monograph. So right now it sits in a real gray zone. It's not banned. It's not approved. It's literally legally undefined. And I want to say this precisely because getting it wrong in either direction, saying the FDA banned it or the FDA cleared it, would both be inaccurate. And it's exactly kind of claim that gets a channel like this flagged. I'm not making any medical claims. I'm just presenting what actually happened. So it's sitting right now just in the middle. You make the distinction what you want to do with that. So let's actually sit with that FDA concern because it's probably the single most important safety question in this entire topic because we know what BPC does, right? I just explained the mechanism. And most content either ignores it or overreacts it, but the core healing mechanism runs through VEGF and direct new blood vessel group. That is precisely the same biological process that lets solid tumors sustain themselves. It's true. It really is true. So mechanistic, oh, I just botched that. Mechanistically, there's a real, legitimate question. Could this peptide, in theory, feed an undetected tumor faster than it would otherwise grow? Here's what the evidence actually says. Since there's no published study, animal or human, that has shown that BPC causes cancer or accelerates tumor growth, some rodent tumor models have actually shown anti-tumor, anti-metastatic effects, but no study has ever been specifically designed to rule out this risk out in someone when someone hasn't existed, or in a more practical case, which would be the general population, an undetected malignancy. So what we have is a mechanistic plausibility, not a documented harm. That's a real distinction, and it's the honest place to land if we're looking at the data objectively. Not because BPC causes cancer, not because that there's zero risk, but it's a legitimate open question that anyone with a personal family history of cancer should take serious enough to actually start this compound, right? You, as the consumer, have to take your health into your own hands because the only person that's going to vouch for yourself is you. And I just want to present the data. But it's not a huge concern, in my opinion, because outside of the cancer question, the more routine side effect reports, unremarkable. Injection site redness, mild nausea at extremely high doses, occasional dizziness, headaches. Other than that, it's no side effects. And some scattered reports of blood pressure fluctuating right after a dose, but that could also happen with eating gummies or I don't know. There's so many things that could cause that as well. But my point is the side effect profile of this compound, it's safe. And I'm not making a medical claim, but looking at the literature, you would expect there to be more concerns, right? Which is why we're asking the question, why isn't it put into category 1? It's because the lack of research supporting the safety, in my opinion. And I just don't think that the FDA has confidence in that as well. The FDA, let's just say that you have some levers have to be pulled internally and some people need to be paid very handsomely for this to happen. Speculation. I don't know. But the FDA has also flagged immunogenicity, excuse me, as a theoretical concern, meaning the body developing an immune response to the peptide itself. And practically speaking, this is sourced almost entirely through the research chemical vendors. And right now, product purity, I think, is a bigger real-world risk than the peptide's own pharmacology. I'm going to stand by that statement super confidently. That's what I think the concern is. But here's where this actually lands. The animal mechanism data is genuinely broad, and with those models, unusually clean, no consistent toxicity signal, even at high doses across tendon, gut, bone, nerve studies. And the human data is thin, as I mentioned, 30 people ever in a controlled setting, and one trial that tried to properly test the human safety data never published the results. So the regulatory status, this could not be more gray if you put gray paint all over it, right? This is a real gray zone, not a green light, and not a ban. And the one safety question that actually deserves serious attention is the angiogenesis and cancer question. Not that it's definitive, the fact that it's unresolved, it's been dismissed, it's not been confirmed. So anytime you see someone talking about BPC safety profile, you just can't confidently say it's safe, but you can't confidently say it's unsafe either. So I don't like being neutral to anything. I like to take very strong opinionated stances while looking at literature. But when the literature does not support a certain stance, what position can you really take? Because the evidence is not pushing the compound to be in any sort of safety profile. It's just not. It's all theoretical. So I want you to leave this video knowing three things. Number one, the side effect for the compound administered itself, it's safe. There's no flushing. There's no allergic reactions reported, unlike other compounds I'll get into. Number two, this is the most gray market peptide that has ever been developed synthetically. Anytime you see someone talking about a personal stance on BPC saying that literature supports XYZ, refer them to this video. I know I'm a small channel. I know I'm quite outspoken, but I'll leave all of my sources in the link below. You just can't take a definitive stance on this, which is why I also think the FDA also took the same stance on it. Although I don't agree with everything they do, I think there just needs to be more literature in order for this peptide to be completely legal. I believe in the science, though. I broke my tibia. I fractured my tibial plateau and tore my meniscus. I healed it with this peptide. I love this peptide. But if we're going to look at the objective literature, I can't sit here and be like, look at that. It works. But number three, and the most important for me personally, source it from the right things, from the right source. Don't go through research chemical sites. Don't go through your buddy at the gym who says he's got a guy on WhatsApp who can deliver it from China in 2 days. And don't get it from the vials that are unlabeled. You just don't know where they're coming from. But I'm going to leave everything that helped me formulate this conclusion, or lack of conclusion, if we want to use that, in the description below, as well as all the resources that helped me formulate this video. Check out ironmendllc.com for all of your peptide and optimization needs. We do hormone optimization, TRT as well, longevity, peptides, you name it, we got it. And we're only going to continue growing. And I just want to educate the public on the new sort of regenerative medicine compounds that are being talked about daily, because this is not a fad. This is going to be life-changing long after I'm gone. And I appreciate you for staying and watching this video. Take it easy.